Welcome, Beans Army, to a spontaneous episode of the Less is More Sports podcast. This normally would be the time where I say we're less of the regular season, but more of the off season. But notice every show I say less of the regular season, not none of the regular season, because exactly what Matt and Ryan and I are going to talk about today is the first official Saturday of the college football season. And without further ado, Matt, Ryan, and I are just gonna have a bunch of fun, no notes are taken off the top of the dome, just reactions to the first full Saturday in college football. So without further ado, whoever wants to start, what are some early thoughts? Floor is yours.
I'm gonna say that I think you were right about the ACC less, but I don't think in the way we thought because it does appear to be deeper, but I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing because Florida State looked abysmal. Clemson's offense, their defense looked fine. Clemson's offense looked abysmal. The team that looked the best this weekend, and I'm sorry, Ryan, but I have to say it was Miami. I mean,
It
going in
was.
and just destroying Florida. I mean, Louisville did look good whomping on Austin P, but it's Austin P. You got to take it with a grain of salt. But Miami, Ward looks like the real deal. Their defense played well, and I think Miami so far came out and made a statement that they're the team to beat in the ACC just because they took their big game and they made the most of it. I understand Florida's
Fact.
probably not as good as Georgia, but Florida's probably better than Georgia Tech, let's be honest. So my big story was Miami just going in and destroying Florida, who had probably the worst Saturday to open a season in a long time. I mean, you've got Javon Curse there, you've got Tim Tebow there, and you get scored on by a guy who's been playing NCAA football for 9 seasons. So it's not really it. Billy Napier, your seat is not just hot; you are on like the nuclear reactor getting ready to blow. So yeah, but Miami to me, that's the big one here. Miami came out, made a statement, looked really good, beating a team on the road in the SEC. While their other competition we figured for the top dog spot in the ACC faltered in week 0 and week 1. But yeah, to Les's credit, I think the ACC had a really good Saturday outside of those two games. So I'm gonna give credit to Les and say credit to Miami and say that I think Miami made a statement trying to set themselves apart as the top team in the ACC. That was my big takeaway.
Yeah, there was so many things that happened in that game. I didn't watch a ton of it because that was at 3:30, so Ohio State was on. But I tried to flip back and forth, but there was just so many things happening. I mean, Billy Napier could not open his water bottle after the game after getting destroyed by Florida. He got destroyed by the water bottle. Um, the Florida leader of recruiting was just like pushing Miami players away from the recruits when they were heading to the locker room. The game just seemed like a whole vibe. I saw the crowd. The crowd was like there was a ton of Miami fans. I get there in Florida, but just I thought that it would just be a lot of Florida fans because it was in the swamp. But there was a ton of Miami fans. The crowd was going crazy. It was a fun game to watch. Cam Ward really proved that he's real good and he's the real deal. So Miami really did surprise me going into the swamp.
That's
While we stay in the ACC, Ryan, I couldn't help but to notice that your name is Dab Zero Sweeney. You want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, I was making it right before we started, and Dabo just proved that he just like he doesn't I don't know, he doesn't like the portal for some reason. But I didn't really see much from Caleb Klubnik that made me feel better about him. It's just like the same old stuff. And Dabo has just been broken since he lost Trevor Lawrence. I mean, we've seen that. And the zero is just because he doesn't have a win on the season yet. It's week 1, but still, I'm not a big Dabo fan at all. But he's gotta make changes. Something's got to happen, or it's just not going to be a good year again.
I mean, I do want to add that some of the things that made me look really smart, and I think I said this on Twitter too.
Mhm.
The U is back, Billy Napier's gone, and Dabo's washed. And those three things, while we kind of keep this ACC theme going on right now, all made me look extremely smart. So thank you all for doing your part in making me look smart for whatever that's worth. Because, we did reach over 100,000 views on the YouTube channel. So maybe people are starting to tune in and realize that we kind of know what we're talking about. But
Maybe. We'll find out.
I hope I do.
And the
I
amazing
hope.
And the amazing thing is, much like Ryan said, it could be a couple weeks before Dabo changes that 0 to a 1 because they've got App State next. No walk in the park there. We know what they're capable of, and then they've got NC State. I think by September 28th they've got a game with Stanford. That should be a win. Then they play Florida State and Wake Forest. Who knows what that's going to be? So it may be a while, yeah. But what I did see, what I did like about Clemson was they proved they had a pretty good defense when they're not being exhausted by the fact they're on the field every 5 seconds because their offense can't do anything, which is incredibly weird because when you've got a guy like Phil Maffa, you just kind of expect a running play, ground and pound, see what happens, hold on to the ball. But Clemson just couldn't get it. Clemson just couldn't get it.
To
And
be fair, though, how many teams can just ground and pound on Georgia, though?
on Georgia, not many. On Georgia Southern, you have to ask Ashton Genty.
Yeah, that's kind of why my name is Ashton Heisman with a 2 instead of an S there, because, I've been on this podcast for the last several years just talking about how he's the best running back in college football, and now you all are starting to believe me. It took a record-breaking performance from him just to kind of see what I'm talking about there, but, maybe I do kind of know what I'm talking about. Just want to throw that out there.
Ollie Gordon would have had 7.
Get off the show, Matthew. You're expelled. Bye.
Matt, I don't know if you saw my reply to him on Twitter. But what did Les tweet? He said something about being Ashton Genty being the best running back in college football, and I was like, did Ollie Gordon transfer or something like that? Did he transfer to Boise State?
Ollie Gordon was emergency drafted by the Raiders or something. They had to get him out of there.
Man, he was implying that was Ollie Gordon in disguise of Ashton Genty, which was kind of wild.
But
well, still, 6 touchdowns on the day. That's for a running back. That's nothing to shake a stick at.
It's also double the amount Ollie Gordon had this weekend. Want to throw that out there.
And he wasn't playing Georgia Southern. He was playing FCS powerhouse South Dakota State, baby.
That's that much better.
Well, yeah, the Jackrabbits gave it everything they had, man. They've been in the national championship game the past 2 years.
Yeah, that's true.
Because we almost had one, and North Dakota State almost came back and beat Colorado. They even had to lead for most of the first half. That was a good game.
It was a good game, and I learned how many people don't actually follow college football that hard because, the first comment in every single post about this game was, "Oh, it's an FCS school," but I'm like, okay, it's the FCS school. Let's be honest here. Like, North Dakota State is the Alabama of the FCS. They're not just your run-in-the-mill FCS school that you expect to get, boat raced by any and every FBS school. I mean, they are the dynasty of the FCS. And how many people, didn't know that was just wild to me, dude.
I've got a lukewarm take also from that game. It's very lukewarm. Jimmy Horn Jr. is actually going to be the leading receiver for Colorado this year, not Travis Hunter.
I'm glad you said lukewarm because I can see it. Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, it's not really a hot take because he is the second best receiver on the team, but everyone's focused on Travis Hunter, and that's to his benefit because, he just tore up that secondary, the Jimmy Horn Jr. So, and like you pointed out too in your tweet, Shadur Sanders has a little bit more protection now, and he's got Jimmy Horn Jr. as a second option who's going to be more open. It's a recipe for success right then and there, right there.
I do want to. This is not to take away your topic, but I do want to say something about Ashton Genty. I am very excited to see Boise State, Oregon. That game.
Oh, that's gonna be fun.
Game is gonna be fun. And
I have a lot better feeling about that game after what we just saw from Oregon against Idaho.
The fact that
Dillon Gabriel needed to throw almost 50 freaking times to beat them by 10 is very concerning.
Yeah,
You know,
he had
I low-key was heading into the season thinking Oregon could compete with Ryan's Buckeyes for the Big Ten crown, and now after that, I'm starting to second guess it a little bit. Like, I mean, if we just I'm just saying, it was not a good showing from Oregon. Of all the teams that
No.
won, they were the least impressive by far.
yeah. And then I have a question for you all. Let's go most surprising team and least surprising team. Let's just start with less, I guess. Do
Okay.
most surprising team first.
Honestly, my most surprising team was Oregon. The fact that they needed 50 pass attempts from Dylan Gabriel to beat Idaho by 10. Again, kind of like I said, I was expecting preseason for them to be in the running with your Buckeyes for the best team in the Big Ten, and after that showing, I'm kind of second guessing. I also said on the Cap or No Cap episode when asked about if Boise State had a decent chance to, be that group of 5 school that got in the college football playoff, but I said no chance, literally because Oregon's on the schedule. But after seeing that, if I'm a Boise State fan, I know I call myself a closet Boise State fan on here all the time, but I'm feeling a lot better about that game.
I think I asked the question wrong. I meant to say like surprising in a good way or a bad way, but you just named your bad way of surprising. So Matt, you can do your like bad way of surprising. That's my bad. I asked it wrong.
Okay, my bad way of surprising team would probably I would agree on Oregon. They looked pretty awful. But my to go with another team, West Virginia, man. I know we have like a guy from West Virginia on ESPN providing the hype machine, but I really thought, after seeing what Drew Aller did in that spring game, how infamously bad that was, and how much of an up and coming program that West Virginia appeared to be, I really thought that they would put up much more of a fight against Penn State than they did. I mean, Penn State, even with that incredibly long weather delay, was in control of that game before, and they never let go from that point. So my disappointment of the weekend would probably go to West Virginia. I thought they would perform a little bit better against Penn State.
I'm glad you said that because Ryan, I feel like you were going to ask my surprise in a good way next.
Yeah. I'm gonna do mine real quick.
Okay,
Uh,
that's
um. So I don't know. I'm agreeing on Oregon for sure. They just I mean, Dylan Gabriel's stats were good. They just couldn't move the ball, I guess. And I didn't really watch that game till like the end just to see if it would get any closer. But Tez Johnson had a good game. They surprised me in a bad way. I thought that they were just gonna come out on top and just destroy. Um, I I'm not just saying this because I'm a Ohio State fan. Michigan's offense did surprise me. I thought they were going to be really good in the run game, at least against Fresno State, but I didn't know that they were going to be coming out that bad. It's only week one. I'll give them that, but it was really bad, and you got a really tough week two that you got to make some big changes, or not big changes, but you gotta figure something out going into week two against Texas. But yeah, you can go ahead with your good surprise.
Yeah, my good surprise was kind of like when Matt talked about the Penn State West Virginia game. I was surprised to see that Penn State could actually pass the ball because that after watching that spring game, was trying to check to see if I had any college eligibility left. That was just an awful performance from Drew Aller. But then he comes in and looks like insert uh, great Penn State quarterback over the last 20 years, huh?
Christian Hackenberg,
Yeah, Christian Hackenberg, Matt McGloin.
Trace
You know what? A
McSorley.
really
Grace
underrated.
McSorley, throw it on it.
Hey, yes, sir. That's the goat. That's the goated song right there. But
That
you
was a
know who's
good
also a
song.
really underrated Penn State quarterback? Daryl
Me.
Clark.
Oh
Yes,
yeah,
Matt
that's
too.
true.
I was being serious. Matt's over here. Me. We might as well throw
Oh,
Bean in at that point.
B would be a good quarterback for the Nittany Lions. He's got that eye of the tiger.
He's
DeMatt would
very
be a
elusive.
great quarterback.
I would have been a defensive tackle.
DeMatt.
DeMatt.
Touchdown to Matt.
Touchdown to Matt. Every
Well,
The
my
swell
pass
good.
was so demure.
Oh my god. Oh my god. My good
or
team
if
of
he
the
gets it.
weekend.
If he gets a sack, it's just all part of the dark matter.
There we go. I'm a two-way player, you know. My go to the weekend, however, we spent the top of the show praising the ACC, but they did have one bad moment. But I'm not going to talk about the team that had the bad moment. I'm going to talk about the victorious Vanderbilt Commodores getting the huge win in overtime over Virginia Tech. And I'm not saying it's because Virginia Tech wouldn't let Enter Sandman into that. Well, it's not their fault, I know, but I'm not saying it's the curse of Enter Sandman not being in that NCAA 25 football video game, but it could be. That's what I'm saying. They could be cursed. But yeah, Vanderbilt, team without a stadium, picked last in the SEC. Only Lee Corso believed in them, and guess what? They did it for Lee Corso, damn it. 34-27 in overtime over Virginia Tech. Big win for them. Might be their only win. You never know. Or maybe this is that one random year Vanderbilt goes 6-6 and we're all amazed. But either way, kudos to the Commodores. You did it. Good win. Good overtime win. Keep that momentum going, guys.
For my surprise, I was also going to say Penn State. They really surprised me, and I didn't even realize that game went on delay because I was watching the Ohio State game and I checked the scores and I was like, Penn State's still playing, but and it didn't even look like the weather was going to hit. The weather was nice and sunny there, and then it hit like the Kentucky game. But can we give props to Iowa for scoring 40 points? Woo! 40 points.
Iowa.
Iowa's offense is back. Just kidding. No, it's not. But we will see throughout the season.
You joke, Ryan, but I do remember seeing a stat where it's like they had more receiving touchdowns caught by wide receivers in the second half of that game than they had the previous 3 seasons. So maybe, just maybe, Iowa does have an offense. And if they have an offense with that defense, who knows? Who knows? Cade McNamara MVP? Maybe.
I'll take it, Matt. I'll take it a step further. If they have some receivers next to those great tight ends that they always have, that's scary enough.
Yeah, that's true. Cade McNamara MVP loading, Player of the Year, Heisman Trophy.
Who knows? Maybe Cade McNamara is the next one to get the Trace McSorley like song.
Oh my gosh.
Throw it on a dime. It's a good song.
It's a great song. You know, we've actually played that. You know, before Matt was even on the show, I've played that song on this podcast.
It's very catchy.
It is very catchy.
I'm actually going to play it before we get off here.
Props to the guy.
The other game.
What is his name? Matty Ice or whatever?
Something like that.
It's something along that. I probably butchered that. Somebody's probably going to be in the comment section and be like, no, Matty Ice is Matt Ryan, the quarterback of the Falcons, blah, 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 blah. And
it's Matty Fresh.
Matty Fresh. Matty Fresh. There we go.
He's like
both real cool names. That was a lame pun. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it works. At least he's not trying to be Dougie Fresh.
No comment.
That's a rapper, Les. Have you never heard?
I know who Dougie Fresh. I know who Dougie Fresh is.
I don't know, Les. You know, I know Ryan doesn't know. That song's like 30 years older than he is. So
another young Ryan joke. I'm here for it.
What did we think about the Texas A&M Notre Dame game?
That's where I was going next, actually. I mean, I was very impressed with that Notre Dame offensive line. I mean, I like everybody else was worried about how they would hold up with their 6 or 11. I heard different numbers. Combined career starts going into Kyle Field, which is always rocking. But they held their own. They did enough to keep Riley Leonard protected. And I think if they play at that level, Notre Dame's going to steal one of those playoff spots because their schedule is favorable to it. And if they win out, they're in. And if that offensive line was the one thing I wasn't sure about. We know what their defense can do. We know what their tight ends can do. We know what Riley Leonard can do. We know what Les thinks of Riley Leonard. But if that offensive line can hold up, that Heisman Trophy campaign may just happen, and Notre Dame can sneak into those playoffs, probably with ease. But what happens at that point, we all know what happens when Notre Dame's in the playoffs. So we'll just have to see if it holds up that long. But yeah, big story of that game, I agree with everybody else, was that offensive line holding steady and finding a way to come away with a pretty gutsy win against Texas A&M.
I have two things to say about that game. First, I want to add to Matt's point and stuff I'm impressed with Notre Dame. I feel like an issue the last several years well, not even several years, really for the last decade, is seeing Notre Dame really come through in the clutch. I feel like these are the type of moments that have really daunted them in the last several years. But to actually see them maintain their composure, especially with all the moving pieces, like Matt said, and come into a very tough environment and deliver and get better as the game went on was very impressive to see. I mean, and that's one of the things they talked about that Riley Leonard brings to the team is just a sense of like grit. And that's something they've really been missing the last decade. And now that they have it, not every game is going to be a dogfight like this. Like Matt said, they have a very favorable schedule going forward. And, Notre Dame could make some serious noise. And I think the more reps that Riley Leonard gets in this Mike Denbrock offense, we know what I've said about him in the preseason. He was my Heisman prediction. That doesn't look great right now, but remember, Jaden Daniels his Heisman campaign wasn't off to the best start last year. And he was also coached by Mike Denbrock. So who knows? Sky's the limit as far as where Notre Dame's offense is going to look by season's end. And on the flip side of that, the second thing I want to say is even though I'm a Texas fan and I'm supposed to love the idea of Texas A&M getting absolutely blasted on social media right now, I'm going to be completely honest. I really can't get involved in that because what I did see from Texas A&M last night is something I never saw from them under Jimbo Fisher. The amount of tenacity that their defense played with and the speed they had going to the ball and their overall just aggressiveness and just how hard Mike Elko already has them playing for him. Look, it may not look great right now, but this was the first game of a new era. Mike Elko stepping in, he's establishing a new culture. If this game was in November, A&M would have thumped Notre Dame, just based on what we saw last night. But yeah, so that's my two big takeaways is that Notre Dame came through in the clutch, something we haven't seen from them in a while, and Texas A&M, let's be honest, are going to get a lot better by season's end. I'm going to tell you that who's that defensive tackle, number 11? He was a monster last night.
He was. I do have a question for the both of you, though, and you're free to agree, disagree with this one or not. Who had the more disappointing performance for you between week 0 and week 1? DJ Uyunglele or Connor Wegman?
DJ for me.
I'm gonna go DJ because I feel like not a lot of people knew Connor Wegman, and people have known DJ and thought he was just gonna come in and be not the hero, but just be really good for. They have more high hopes for DJ, but Connor Wegman, like I think that's how you say his name.
I think so.
Weigman, something like that.
Aggie man. Oh.
Yeah.
Aggie man.
I think it was just he had like 2 interceptions. I think it was just kind of off game. He'll be fine. But DJU.
DJ for me, I feel like because he played the quote unquote more inferior opponent. I don't mean to say that to knock on Georgia Tech, but Notre Dame's a top 10 team. Georgia Tech was unranked. So that for me, for Connor Weigman to struggle against a top 10 team versus DJ Uyunglele struggling against an unranked team, I feel like speaks different levels of volume there.
All I know is that Florida, I wonder what they're going to do next week with Mertz. Mertz looked terrible before he got injured. And then he gets injured, and then they put in Lagway. Les has some thoughts about him.
I think he's overrated. Like, I follow recruiting pretty heavily, and Lagway is, being called everything under the book as far as how great he is. Cam Newton 2.0, whatever. And he put up some Star Wars numbers. But what a lot of people don't understand about the competition that he played in Texas, anytime you go 12-1 and you are the 21st ranked team in your state, that usually tells me you're not playing the best competition night in and night out. So I think a lot of those numbers are a bit inflated for those reasons. And then following the Elite 11 camp and all that stuff, if you are a 5-star quarterback and you put up the dismal performance that Lagoy had in those 7-on-7s, like look it up sometime. It's horrible. The fact it's that bad. Like during the entire 7-on-7 event, he didn't register a single touchdown, which is insanely hard to do in 7-on-7s. But no, and then obviously you take like all-star games with a grain of salt, so I don't want to harp too much on that. But even his appearances in those games, I'm like, yeah, I don't see it. He's got a lot of physical traits that are likable, but as far as like actually playing the position, I'm not overly impressed. So
I get that one.
In my opinion, Graham Mertz has been mid his whole career. Even at Wisconsin, now at Florida, he's just been mid. Like
I just think he's too conservative. Like he's great in the short game, but he can't like take the top off the defense.
Yeah, he can't air it out. No, not very
right.
Super well. I will say too, moving from one team to another. I know once again we're talking about the level of competition here. That's always usually a qualifier in a week 1 game. But man, I watched a little bit of it. Louisville's defense looks legit, like very legit.
Yeah, the defensive line. The whole defense, but the defensive line really stood out to me.
Yeah, they looked amazing. I mean, Ashton Gillott, we all know how good he is. I mean, but they looked really good. I mean, how many sacks did they have? Like, I think 5 at least, maybe more, maybe even 7. Thor Griffin had one because I was excited about that one. I know Gillott had one, and then some guys had 2. But yeah, it was just an impressive performance from that Louisville defensive line. I mean, I know they weren't playing Georgia or anything like Clemson was, but that's another reason why I think that maybe we saw a little bit of a shift in power in the ACC. Those guys are good.
Before speaking of which, Matt, the last thing I want to do, because we got about 8 minutes left before we got to get off of here, is I want all of us to grade our team's performances this weekend. Ryan, I'll start with you. You're a Louisville and Ohio State fan. Give us your grade for both of them.
Louisville, I would probably give like A minus. I think it was pretty solid. I mean, it was a shutout. That's always good against Austin P. Or not Austin P, but it's always good to have a shutout. For Ohio State, I would probably give it B. I expected them to come out slow, but we cleaned it up in the second half. Will Howard looked very solid for me at least, so I'll give Ohio State a B, closer to a B minus, but a B.
Matt, I know you're a college football free agent, but do you want to claim the Hoosiers this week or not?
This week we will claim them because I actually did watch a little bit of it, even though the game was on Fox Sports Plus and I had to stream it. But I will say that like the offense was very impressive in the first half, not as good in the second half. But when you go up by that much and you're Indiana, you're just not used to that position. What really impressed me though was like the fact the fans are actually back in the building, back in Memorial Stadium. There's a little bit of hype around Kurt Yeti, and you can see why because you go from Tom Allen, who had a great game as a defensive coordinator for Penn State yesterday, but you go from a guy who was doing jazz hands and dancing in the locker room and love everyone to a dude who's like halftime like interview was just him laughing like the Joker when they ask him about what the team needs to do to improve. Like he's going to go in there and just scream for 13 minutes primally at like this Indiana football team. And then I don't know if you guys have seen it. I think I sent you the GIF of him just gritting his teeth after that holding call. It's like thinking of Tom Allen doing that where he'd just be like clapping and high fiving and seeing like a fairly fired up coach. It is reinvigorating to see that as an Indiana like observer. I wouldn't even say fan because they've just been so bad my entire lifetime and prior lifetimes that it's hard to get super involved. But the offense looked good in the first half. They've got a good running game. They've got good receivers. Curtis Rourke looks as good as I thought he would. Defense came through and balled out. So I will give Indiana, and I'm grading very lenient here because we're talking about Indiana, a B plus for their 31-7 victory over the Fighting Pit Bulls of FIU.
Fair enough. I guess time to get into my teams. Duke, I got to grade very differently than my other team, and I'll get into why that is. Defensively, Duke gets an A plus for me because losing Mike Elko, I understand Manny Diaz is a defensive minded coach, great defensive coordinator in his history, but I didn't expect Duke to look that good on defense this early. They were, I know it's Elon, and I want to take that with a grain of salt, but they were flying around out there. They had 8 sacks in this game. I mean, just the amount of pressure that, Coach Patke was bringing and just the way they were just flying around out there was just awesome. So defense for the Blue Devils gets an A plus for me. Offensively, I give them a B minus. I would have liked to have seen them establish the run a little better. I think we have the running backs to do it. Jacquez Moore is a really good back. The new transfer we got is a decent runner, and I was surprised to see that Peyton Jones isn't getting a lot of touches. So that kind of surprised me a little bit. And then as far as our receiving game, because Malik I thought looked great. Malik I thought looked really good. He has probably the most talented quarterback Duke's had, arguably ever. No, probably is actually ever. But you could tell our receiving core isn't used to airing it out because they looked very uncomfortable running deep routes, and they had so many drop passes that would have just just blown this game wide open. So that's why, it finally did start to click a little bit as the game went on, but that's why offensively they get a B minus for me. I mean, in Texas, do I really need to say anything else? They gave Colorado State their first shutout in 11 years. This was Texas's first opening game shutout in 20 years. So that just tells you how good their defense played. And then offensively, at first, I thought it was going to be the same old Texas, just different year story where, we look good in spurts, but then kind of mess around, do some dumb shit here and there. But no, then they got going. And what's really amazing though, that I don't want to spend too much time harping on this, but it's something I definitely need to say. What's really amazing is that Texas lost 3 receivers to the NFL, and their receiving core looks better, which is insane to think about. Isaiah Bond looks as good as advertised. Matthew Golden, I know Matt was higher on him than me. Not that I wasn't, but Matt was super high on Matthew Golden. Silas Bolden, didn't get the reps that I thought he might get in week 1, but in spurts looked really good as a returner. Ryan Wingo looks like one of the best freshman receivers, not named Jeremiah Smith. Shout out to Ryan on that one. Or Ryan Williams of Alabama. Ryan Wingo looks really good. Yeah, and of course, I can't not talk about Arch Manning getting his first touchdown pass of his collegiate career. And he did it in one of the most crazy ways possible. Rushes to the right and flips it to Silas Bolden, who dives for it. That's one of the most exciting first touchdowns you'll ever see. So, yeah, Texas gets an A. I even given an A plus for that effort. And I'm very, very confident going into our week 2 matchup with Michigan, even though it is at the Big House. And I'm sure that we will get a much different effort than what Fresno State got. But yeah, overall, I'm pretty excited about my teams. And without further ado, because we officially have about 2 minutes left, I do want to go ahead and say like and subscribe to Less is More Sports YouTube and Spotify channels. Be sure to follow our social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, and Threads. That's at Less is More Sports. Be sure to follow the side quest on the YouTube Shorts and the TikTok page. That's at BeansDad018. And without further ado, I hate ads. I hate ads.
You're not going to get that Sorley song in. Oh, will he?
Here, put the mic on the.
You hear it?
Kind of.
I had to get that in there.
Hey, you did. You did.
It's a good song.
It is a good song. And week 2 may be even better than week 1 for college football. There are some really good games coming up. And don't forget, tonight you've got USC and LSU.
I just need LSU to win for my parlay. Thanks, bud.
Thanks, Bean. He probably advised that parlay. We all know it.
Oh, probably because he wants to win money so I can get him more treats.
Bean wants all the toys, so he can go to Penn State and become a quarterback.
Yeah, he just wants everything. He has to be involved in everything.
He wants to rule the world. Everybody wants to rule the world, especially Bean.
He is Emperor Bean. That's all we got to say.
That is true. He is the emperor.
Bean.
That scared the crap out of me.
It didn't scare
That's
Bean. I promise.
Bean
We're
is
about to get cut
Bean
off.
is undaunted. Bean's undaunted. The most undaunted dog there ever was.
Unless Daddy gets angry, then he's daunted.
Still undaunted.